I want to talk about 6 tips which I wish I learned sooner on my photography journey to help me become a better photographer. And if you are a beginner or even a more experienced photographer, hopefully these 6 tips will help you to progress along your photography journey and become a better photographer. Because as we all know, mastering the art of photography is very difficult, it's challenging and it's exciting. So let's jump right into these 6 tips. Hopefully they help you out. One of the first things you want to learn when you are learning photography is how to get a nice blurry background in your photos, and very quickly you find out that you need to be shooting with a wide open aperture to be able to do that, and the wider the aperture, the more blurry the background you are able to get. And maybe you find yourself buying a nice prime lens with an aperture of f1.8 or maybe even 1.4 or 1.2, and then you start to shoot everything at that wide open aperture. And while it is so tempting to shoot everything at that wide open aperture because you now have that capability to be able to do it and get that blurry background, it's not all of the time that you want to be doing it. And you do kind of get drawn into it at the start of your photography journey because you think, I've got an f1.8 lens, I should be shooting everything at f1.8 because I can. But that's not the case at all, because when you are shooting at f1.8, your depth of field is so shallow that you're losing out on sharpness in other areas as well. And sometimes stopping down to f8, maybe even f11, is going to be the much better aperture to shoot your photos at. That's especially the case when you're shooting things like landscapes, because you want a nice sharp landscape photo, and shooting at f1.4 you're going to lose out on a lot of that detail that shooting at a higher aperture gives you. So definitely experiment with using different apertures and figuring out all of the different effects you can get from using a different aperture, but don't fall into the trap of shooting everything wide open. It's an easy trap to fall into, but if you can get out of it, you're going to become a much better photographer. Composition is one of the main elements of photography, and when you are learning photography, it's very easy to become overwhelmed and find it very daunting when you have all of these different things going into your compositions, because you have things like the rule of thirds, leading lines, there's that Fibonacci circle spiral thing that I don't fully understand, but it is a thing, and it's very daunting when you're trying to learn all of these different things. But the truth is that while all of these different guides are useful, you actually learn and get better by teaching your eye and going out and taking photographs for yourself. And the more you do that, the more you start to realize the sorts of things that work. Developing that true sense of composition comes from purely practice and experimentation and nothing else. It's all about trying different angles and different perspectives and seeing what works for you. And the more you do that over time, you'll start to learn more about those compositions. You'll figure out what works best for your eye and what you're trying to create, and that is when your compositions will start to improve. But it is in no way a quick process, and it's all about just repeating that process as often as you can. This is one of the things that I find toughest even to this day as a professional photographer, and that is that when you go out to take photos, it's not always going to be the case that you come back with something that you're happy with. Sometimes you may even go out to take photos and not take a single photo. It doesn't matter if that is the case, because you're not going to get something you're happy with all of the time. But the fact that you've actually got yourself out to go and take photographs is a win in the first place, and you will have learned something in going out to take photos that you wouldn't have learned if you didn't go out to take photos. So don't worry about the fact that you didn't manage to get anything you are proud of or that you're happy with, because you're still in that process of learning, and you will always be in that, because it doesn't matter if you've been a professional for 20 years, sometimes you will have those occasions where you go out and you're not going to be happy with what you create. It happened to me literally 2 days ago. I went out to take photos, and in the morning when I woke up, there was an incredible sunrise, and I got out to take photos and there was not a cloud in the sky. It was an incredible day. The weather was amazing, but I was kicking myself all day because I didn't get out for the sunrise and I'd missed out on it. All day, all I was thinking about was how I would have got better photos if I was out for sunrise, but instead I was just out in the harsh sunlight and I wasn't getting anything I was happy with. So you live and you learn, you make mistakes, and that is when you come back and you take better photos next time. This one is incredibly easy, but again, it is something that you have to try so hard not to do, and that is comparing yourself to others on social media. What you have to remember when you are looking at photos on social media is that the photos you are seeing are only the photos that that photographer has chosen to show you. You don't see all of the other photos that they've decided not to show you because they're not happy with them. You're just seeing those few that they have taken. Maybe they've gone out and taken 300 photos of a landscape. You might see that one and it looks incredible, but you're only seeing that one. You don't see all the others where they made all the mistakes that they don't want you to see. That is the problem with social media, and because we only see those good photos that people want us to see, we start then comparing that photo to our work and we think, well, I've not got anything that looks like that. But realistically, you might have one photo that looks like that, and that might be the one that you share on social media, and then someone else is thinking the same about your work, and it's all a big spiral, and it can be very easy to get down on yourself and think your work isn't as good as other people's. The quicker that you can learn to not compare yourself to others, the better. And yes, sometimes it is more difficult than others because everyone has their own ups and downs when it comes to their work, and that's natural, that's real. But don't compare yourself to others because it is one of the worst things you can do. But it is also one of the hardest things to do, not compare yourselves to others. But the trick is try and use social media as a little bit of inspiration to help you get out and learn from other photographers, and use it as inspiration to get you out with your camera. My final tip is one of the easiest tips in the world, but it can be easier said than done, especially in the winter when the weather is dreadful and it's dark by 3:30 in the afternoon. The last thing you want to go and do is go out and take photos, but just go out and take more photos, because the more photos you take, it is all about repeating that process. Like I mentioned before, the more photos you take, the better your photos will become. And you can watch as many videos on YouTube as you want, as many tutorials, and try and learn from other photographers and view other photographers' work on social media, but you're not going to improve unless you actually go out and take photos for yourself. And I fell into that trap very early on in my photography journey. I was watching too many videos and not actually going out and creating photos for myself. But when you do actually start to get out and take more photos, take hundreds of photos, we're not limited now. Now we've got digital cameras. It was trickier when everything was film years ago. Get a bigger SD card, go out and take hundreds and thousands of photos and learn from your mistakes. And that's how you become a better photographer, by just repeating that process. And that's how you build your passion for it as well, because you can see how far you've come over the years. Every time that you press that shutter button, you are learning something new, whether it's adjusting your shutter speed, aperture, ISO, your compositions, playing with lighting, even playing with natural light. Every single time you take a photo, try and learn something from it, and it becomes more enjoyable as well, because you're starting to figure out what is actually going on, and you know exactly how to get that thing that you are trying to create. That makes that thing that you are trying to create. That's the technical term. That's not the technical term. Just take more photos. So there you go. 6 very simple tips that I wish I learned a lot sooner in my journey as a photographer. And now, 3 years as a professional photographer, I can look back and realize where I went wrong in those early days and how I could have improved a lot quicker to get me to where I am now. A few of these tips might help you out as well. But remember that it's not a quick process learning photography. It's not a quick process learning anything, but the more time you spend doing it and the more time you spend learning and growing your passion for it and enjoying it, that is how you become better. It's not an instant result, and it never should be an instant result. And I think we kind of forget that a lot nowadays with how quickly we have access to everything. But anyway, that's for another video. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. What tips do you wish you learned a lot sooner in your photography journey? Don't forget to hit subscribe, hit the like button, and I shall see you very soon in the next video.